Hey guys, tonight we're going to step into the quiet static of a late night stream, into a space that was, for a small community, a digital sanctuary. We're following the ghost of a streamer known only as Voidwalker, who played forgotten horror games in the deep, quiet hours of the night. Their channel was a refuge from the loud, chaotic world of online content, until one evening, during a routine broadcast, a single split-second glitch tore a hole in that reality. For a fraction of a moment, the streamer's familiar, shadowed face was replaced by something else, something impossible, gaunt, and utterly inhuman. It's a story about how our most comfortable modern rituals can be invaded by the oldest kinds of fear, how a ghost can be born not in a dusty attic, but in a stream of corrupted data packets. The chilling part isn't just what was seen, but the aftermath. The silence, the disappearance, and the unsettling questions about what exactly was sitting in that chair, broadcasting to the world. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know down in the comments where you're listening from, and what time it is for you. I find it fascinating to see where these stories reach. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You know the feeling. It's late, well past midnight. The house is settled, a tomb of quiet creaks and humming appliances. The day's noise has faded, leaving only the soft glow of your monitor painting shadows on the wall. This is your time, your ritual. And for months, that ritual has included Voidwalker. You found the channel by accident, a random recommendation from the algorithm, a thumbnail showing the jagged 16-bit art of a game you'd never heard of. There were only 50 or 60 other viewers in the stream that first night, a tiny, quiet congregation in the vast, echoing cathedral of the internet. That's what drew you in. It wasn't the high-energy, jump-scare-mongering of popular horror streamers. It was the opposite. Voidwalker's streams were a form of digital meditation. His voice, when he spoke, was a low, soothing murmur, barely rising above the game's chiptune soundtrack. He rarely showed his full face, just a small, circular facecam in the bottom corner of the screen, his features obscured by low lighting and the shadow from a non-existent brim. He was anonymous, a comforting presence without the baggage of a personality. He wasn't a celebrity, he was a companion. The screen name, Voidwalker, felt perfect. He walked through these forgotten digital voids, these old pixelated worlds of horror, and you and a few hundred others walked with him. The community was like him, quiet, respectful. The chat moved slowly, full of thoughtful comments on the game's atmosphere or esoteric lore. There were no spamming emotes, no trolls, no screaming for attention. It was a shared experience, a collective leaning in to whisper about the ghost on the screen. There's a certain intimacy in that, a trust you place in the anonymous curator of your late-night piece. You feel like you know them, even though you know nothing. This parasocial relationship, the one-sided bond we form with creators, felt different with Voidwalker. It wasn't about admiration. It was about a shared sensibility, a mutual appreciation for the quiet, the eerie, and the forgotten. You felt safe in that digital space he'd carved out. Tonight was no different. You had your headphones on, the sound of an 8-bit wind howling through the speakers. On screen, a tiny, blocky protagonist navigated a decaying, pixelated mansion in a game called Lament of the Child. Voidwalker hadn't spoken for nearly 10 minutes, letting the oppressive atmosphere of the game do the work. His facecam showed the usual, the vague shape of his head, the soft reflection of the monitor and glasses you could only just make out. The air in your room was still. You were completely absorbed, tracing the patterns on a digital wallpaper, listening to the synthesized footsteps echo. It was a perfect, comfortable pocket of existence, suspended in the amber of a late Tuesday night. This kind of broadcast, this shared digital space, feels so modern, so removed from older forms of hauntings. But strange intrusions into broadcasts are not a new phenomenon. Think of the Max Headroom incident in 1987, where a Chicago television station's signal was hijacked by a person in a grotesque mask, spewing nonsense. For those few minutes, the trusted, curated reality of television was broken, replaced by something chaotic and unsettling. It was a ghost in the machine, a human one, but a ghost nonetheless, a reminder that the signals we invite into our homes can be subverted. It proved that the veil between the intended broadcast and outside chaos was terrifyingly thin. You're watching Voidwalker, lulled by the familiar routine, feeling that specific brand of cozy dread that retro horror games evoke. It's not real fear, just the pleasant simulation of it. The character on screen is about to enter a child's bedroom, a classic horror trope. Voidwalker lets out a soft sigh, a sound of anticipation you've heard 100 times. He's about to speak, to offer some quiet observation about the level design or the soundscape. And this is when the ritual breaks. This is when the comfort you've built night after night shatters into a million ice-cold shards. It's just for a moment, a single frame. But a single frame is all it takes. When we build these sanctuaries around anonymous figures, what are we truly trusting? Are we connecting with a person or with a carefully constructed idea of one? We fill in the gaps of their shadowed face and quiet demeanor with our own need for calm, for companionship. We project a guardian, a friend, onto a canvas of pixels and modulated sound waves. But what happens when the canvas itself ripples, and for a split second, shows us what might have been lurking behind it all along? It happens between one frame and the next. The jump is so fast, so utterly incongruous with the steady, low bitrate feed, that your brain struggles to process it. One moment, you're looking at the familiar, shadowed silhouette of Voidwalker. The next, the Facecam flickers. It's not a normal buffer or a moment of pixelation. It's a clean, horrifying swap. A replacement. For a single, indelible frame of video, maybe less a 20th of a second, if Thatha's face is gone. In its place is something else. Your mind, in that instant, tries to rationalize it. You think data moshing, a compression artifact where frames from different parts of a video file get mixed up. You think it was a jump scare mod, a prank he was playing on his audience, something completely out of character but not impossible. But what you saw, it didn't feel like either of those things. It felt ancient and wrong. The face that filled the circular frame was stark white, a bleached bone pale that seemed to absorb the light from the monitor rather than reflect it. It was gaunt, impossibly so, with cheekbones like sharpened ridges beneath a thin, translucent layer of skin. There was no hair, no eyebrows, nothing to soften the harsh, skeletal geometry of its structure. The mouth was a thin, black line, closed but stretched too wide, almost to the jawline, a caricature of a neutral expression that felt more like a suppressed scream. But the eyes are what burrow into your memory and refuse to leave. They were huge, perfectly round, and completely black. Not dark brown, not shadowed, but the flat, matte black of a void. They were like two holes punched into reality, staring directly, not at the game, not at the screen, but out of the monitor, at you. The entire image had a strange, digital quality, a sharpness that didn't belong in the soft, slightly blurry feed of the Facecam. It was as if a high-resolution photograph of a marble statue had been crudely pasted over the video, but a statue carved by someone with a deep and intimate understanding of fear. It wasn't human. It was a sterile, biological blueprint of a face, stripped of all warmth, all life, all familiarity. It was the kind of face you might see in a sleep paralysis nightmare, a silent observer at the foot of your bed. And then, just as quickly as it appeared, it was gone. The feed snaps back. Voidwalker is there again, the same shadowed figure, head tilted slightly, seemingly unaware that anything has happened. He clears his throat, the sound jarring in the sudden, ringing silence that now fills your headphones. He hasn't missed a beat. He proceeds with the commentary he was about to deliver. "All right," he murmurs, his voice the same calm, even tone as always. "The music box melody in this room. It's the same one from the asylum level in their previous game, The Gilded Cage. A nice little callback for anyone who remembers. He noticed nothing. Nothing. The catastrophic rupture in reality that just played out on your screen, the image now seared onto the inside of your eyelids, passed him by completely. You hit the rewind button on the stream player, your heart hammering against your ribs. You have to see it again. You have to be sure. But the live feed doesn't let you. You're trapped in the present, watching him play, listening to his soft-spoken analysis while the memory of that thing screams in your mind. This experience, this momentary vision of something other, resonates with old, almost forgotten folklore. Think of the concept of the fetch, or the doppelganger, in Irish and Germanic traditions. These were not just simple lookalikes. They were wraiths, spiritual doubles whose appearance was a harbinger of death or immense misfortune. There's a documented account from the late 19th century, a letter from a woman in County Clare, Ireland, who claimed to have seen her husband's fetch. She described seeing him walk down the road towards their cottage, but his face was pale as milk, and his eyes were like burnt holes in a blanket. He didn't acknowledge her. Minutes later, the real man came down the same road, alive and well, but was thrown from his horse and killed the very next day. The detail of the eyes, those dark, empty voids, is a terrifyingly common thread in such tales. It suggests a being that is only mimicking a form, looking out through eye holes in a mask it doesn't quite know how to wear. You're frozen, staring at the screen. You're no longer watching the game, you're watching him, the little circle in the corner. You're waiting for it to happen again. Every flicker of the bitrate, every slight pixelation, makes your breath catch in your throat. The comfort is gone. The sanctuary has been violated. The anonymous companion you trusted has become a source of profound dread, not because of what he's doing, but because of what might be latched onto him, what might be wearing his digital skin as a disguise. A deep philosophical question begins to form in the pit of your stomach, a question that feels too large for a Tuesday night. If a tree falls in a forest and no one is around to hear it, does it make a sound? And if a man's face is momentarily replaced by a monster on a live stream, but the man himself doesn't see it, did it really happen? Or did you, and a few hundred other strangers, just become the sole witnesses to a miracle of the damned? He keeps playing. Voidwalker, or the thing in his chair, continues his quiet exploration of the pixelated mansion. He guides the little character into the child's bedroom you were anticipating before the glitch. The music box melody tinkles through your headphones, a fragile, haunting tune. He comments on the doll sitting in a rocking chair, its button eyes seeming to follow you. He praises the developers for their masterful use of atmosphere. To him, everything is normal. The stream continues, but you know it isn't, because something else has broken. Not in the feed, not in the Facecam, but in the game itself. The game character, the small 16-bit sprite that Voidwalker controls, has stopped moving. It's standing in the center of the digital room, just past the threshold. Voidwalker is still talking, his murmurs providing a surreal, detached soundtrack to the scene. He's explaining how the developers coded the lighting to flicker in sync with the melody, a detail you would normally find fascinating. But his hands are clearly not on the keyboard, or if they are, the game is no longer listening. The character is frozen, utterly, unnaturally still. This isn't a loading screen. It isn't a cutscene. In the game, the dust motes are still swirling in the moonbeams from the window. The doll's rocking chair is still gently moving. The world is alive, but the player is not. Then, it does something you have never seen a video game character do. It's a simple action, just a few pixels shifting, but it's the most terrifying thing you've seen all night. The character's head, a tiny square of pixels with 2 white dots for eyes, slowly rotates. Not the whole body, just the head. It turns, frame by agonizing frame, away from the spooky doll, away from the flickering lights, away from the path forward in the game. It turns to face the bottom of the screen. No, not the bottom of the screen. It turns to face the location of the Facecam, to face the player. The 2 white dots that represent its eyes are now locked onto the small circular window where Voidwalker's shadowed face resides. The game character is staring at its god. or at the thing that replaced him. The silence from Voidwalker is no longer calming. It's loaded with dramatic irony. He's oblivious, dissecting the game's artistic merit, while the very tool of his interaction, his digital avatar, has seemingly gained sentience and is now recoiling in horror from something it can perceive, but he cannot. You feel a cold dread creep up your spine, a primal fear that bypasses all rational thought. The game is watching the player. The program has become aware of the ghost in the machine. This is a complete and utter breakdown of the established reality of the stream. It's one thing to see a visual artifact. It's another for that artifact to have a tangible, impossible effect on a separate piece of software. The game and the Facecam feed are supposed to be two independent streams of data, combined by the broadcasting software but not interacting. This shouldn't be possible. This bizarre phenomenon of a machine seemingly reacting to an unseen presence has eerie parallels in the history of paranormal investigation. Consider the concept of instrumental transcommunication, or ITC. This is a field where researchers use electronic devices, radios, televisions, computers to try and communicate with the dead. One of the most famous historical cases is that of Fredrik Jürgensen, a Swedish painter who, in 1959, was recording birdsong. On playback, he heard what he believed to be the voice of his deceased mother whispering to him from within the recording. This led to decades of people using spirit boxes or electronic voice phenomena, EVP recorders, claiming that spirits could manipulate the electronics to form words. The unsettling anecdote you recall is of a paranormal group investigating an old hospital. Their EMF meters were dead, their cameras showing nothing. But a child's toy they'd brought, a simple electronic piano, began to play a slow, discordant tune, all by itself, in an empty hallway. The machine seemed to be the only thing that could perceive the presence in the room. The chat window, which had been placid just minutes before, is now a frantic, cascading waterfall of text. But we'll get to that. For now, you are fixated on the screen. The pixelated character remains frozen, its head tilted in that impossible way, bearing silent witness to the man in the corner of the screen. Voidwalker finally seems to notice that the game is unresponsive. There's a slight shift in his chair. "Huh," he says. The single word hangs in the air, trivial and inadequate. "Looks like it froze up." He chuckles softly. It is the most horrifying sound you have ever heard. A sound of innocence in the face of an absolute nightmare. Guess lament of the child finally lamented its last. "Let me see if I can..." He trails off. You hear the clicking of his mouse, the soft tapping of keys. He's troubleshooting. He's trying to fix a software bug while you are sitting there, convinced you have just witnessed a tear in the fabric of the universe. The dissonance is staggering. The game character doesn't move. It continues its silent, pixelated vigil, staring at the glitch, at the pale face that was there for only a moment, but whose impression is now burned into the very code of the game itself. The core question that this moment raises is one of boundaries. Where does the digital world end and our world begin? We treat them as separate, a screen between them. We are the user. It is the tool. But what if that boundary is more permeable than we think? What if a sufficiently powerful event or entity on our side of the glass could echo across the barrier, not just as a visual for us to see, but as a tangible command that the digital world is forced to obey? What if the ghost in the machine isn't a metaphor, but a literal description of one reality bleeding into the next? While you're reeling, grappling with the impossible sight of the game character staring at its player, a third element of this unfolding nightmare makes itself known: the chat. The small, quiet community that you felt a part of has just been jolted awake. The slow, thoughtful river of comments has become a torrential, chaotic flood, a cacophony of digital screaming. You finally tear your eyes away from the frozen game and the oblivious streamer, and you look at the chat log scrolling frantically up the side of the screen. It's a real-time record of shared panic, a document of 100 minds trying and failing to process the same horrifying anomaly. The first messages appear a split second after the glitch. WTF was that? Did anyone else see that? Jesus Christ. His face. The initial wave is pure, unadulterated shock. Simple, declarative statements of terror. Your own feeling of isolated madness evaporates, replaced by the chilling confirmation that you are not alone. Everyone saw it, or at least many of them did. The shared nature of the experience doesn't make it less scary. It validates the fear, amplifies it, makes it real. Then, the second wave of messages begins to roll in. This is the analysis phase, the frantic attempt to define what was just seen. The descriptions are varied but all point to the same horrific core. Pale face. Like a statue. The eyes were black holes. It wasn't human. Data mosh? No way too clean. These little snippets of text, typed out in haste and panic, are like fragments of a witness statement from a dozen different angles. One user, named Pixel Prophet, types, "It looked like the gray aliens but gaunt, like it was starving." Another, Retro Ghoul, adds, "No, it was like those old plague doctor masks, but it was a real face, smooth." The descriptions clash and converge, painting a collective, nightmarish portrait of the entity. It's a digital seance, where the ghost isn't being summoned, but collectively described into a more concrete existence. And then comes the third wave, the crosstalk, the arguments, the accusations, the disbelief warring with the evidence of 100 pairs of eyes. It was a filter he has to be trolling. Voidwalker doesn't do jump scares, you idiot. Guys, my game character just turned and looked at the camera. Is this a scripted event? No, mine did too. Mine too. WTF. This is the moment the two anomalies, the face glitch and the frozen character, are connected by the community. The panic doubles. The realization that it isn't just a visual prank but something affecting the game itself spreads like wildfire. The chat becomes a space of frantic, crowdsourced troubleshooting, but for a problem that has no logical solution. People are confirming that their own game, which they are playing along with the streamer, is exhibiting the same behavior. The character is stuck, staring. This detail is crucial. It's a documented, verifiable account of the event's impossible ripple effect. The phenomenon wasn't just on his screen, it was broadcast out. It was infectious. This digital panic is a modern version of a very old human reaction. It's reminiscent of the mass hysteria events of the past, like the dancing plagues of the 14th to 17th centuries in Europe. In 1518, in Strasbourg, a woman named Frau Trophia began to dance fervently in the street. Within a month, hundreds had joined her, dancing uncontrollably for days until they collapsed from exhaustion, some even dying. No one could explain it. The dancers claimed they couldn't stop. They were compelled by an unseen force. While the cause is debated, likely stress-induced, psychosis, the core of the event, is a shared, inexplicable, and terrifying experience spreading through a community. The chat log is a digital version of that, a contagion of fear and confusion, spreading not through physical proximity, but through fiber optic cables. Amidst the chaos, Voidwalker remains a placid island of ignorance. His calm voice, trying to restart the game, is a maddening counterpoint to the pandemonium in the chat. "All right, just gonna have to kill the process and restart it," he says with a sigh. "Sorry about this, folks. Old games, you know how it is." He doesn't see it. He doesn't know. Someone tell him. Don't. What if it's listening? This last comment, from a user named Silent Spectator, sends a fresh wave of ice through your veins. The fear is now layered. First, the fear of the unknown entity. Second, the fear for the oblivious streamer. And now, a third, more paranoid fear. The fear of interacting, of drawing the attention of the thing that might be co-opting his stream. The community is trapped behind their screens, witnesses to a potential haunting, but powerless to intervene, unsure if intervention would even be wise. They are reduced to the role of a Greek chorus, commenting on a tragedy they cannot stop. You scroll back through the chat, your eyes scanning the timestamps. The entire event, from the glitch to the full-blown panic, took less than 90 seconds. In that minute and a half, A comfortable niche community was transformed into a group of terrified witnesses. Their shared digital sanctuary became a containment zone for a paranormal event. What does it mean for a haunting to be not just witnessed, but collectively documented in real time by a group of strangers? The chat log becomes an artifact in itself, a primary source document of a modern ghost story. It's a raw, unfiltered transcript of human minds encountering the impossible and trying desperately to communicate that terror to each other, to feel less alone in the face of the encroaching void. The 90 seconds of live panic were just the beginning. The story of the Glitchy Streamer was too strange, too perfectly terrifying, to remain confined to the small pond of Voidwalker's community. In the hours that followed the stream, which Voidwalker eventually ended after a successful reboot of the game, seemingly with no memory of the character's strange behavior, the digital spores of the event began to spread. The haunting was about to go viral. It starts with one person, a viewer who had been screen recording the stream, perhaps to make a compilation of Voidwalker's best moments, or maybe just out of habit. They isolate the crucial 2-minute clip, the moment before the glitch, the flicker of the pale face, the game character turning, the explosion in the chat, and Voidwalker's oblivious commentary laid over the top of it all. They uploaded to a video sharing site with a simple, sensational title, "Streamer's Face Replaced by Ghost, Game Character Reacts." At first, it moved slowly, shared on small paranormal forums and niche subreddits dedicated to unsettling internet mysteries. Here, it's met with a mix of genuine excitement and deep skepticism. The initial comments are a debate. "It's a clever arg," one user posts, referring to an alternate reality game. "He's faking it to build a narrative." Another counters, "The chat reaction looks too genuine, and the way the game character freezes? How would you even script that in a 30-year-old ROM?" This is the first phase of its viral life, the petri dish, where the core narrative is debated, analyzed, and strengthened by the arguments against it. Then, a larger influencer, a YouTuber, with millions of subscribers who specializes in unexplained internet footage, finds the clip. They feature it in their weekly roundup. This is the catalyst. The clip is no longer a curiosity for a few thousand people. It's broadcast to a global audience. The influencer slows it down, zooms in on the glitched frame, highlights the chat messages, and overlays spooky music. They present it as potentially real, a carefully chosen phrase that maximizes engagement by inviting both believers and debunkers to argue in the comments. Now, the clip is everywhere. It's on TikTok, cut into a 15-second jump scare. It's on Twitter, attached to a thread about the most terrifying clips on the internet. It's on Facebook, shared by your aunt with the caption, "Be careful what you watch online." Each platform strips away more of the original context. The quiet, meditative nature of Voidwalker's streams is lost. The identity of the game, Lament of the Child, becomes irrelevant. The story is distilled to its most potent, viral elements, the creepy face and the sentient video game. This process of viral amplification mirrors the way urban legends have always spread, but at an unprecedented speed. Think of the legend of the backseat killer. The original story, passed by word of mouth, was a slow burn. It involved a woman driving at night, a car flashing its lights behind her, and the eventual reveal that the flashing was a warning about a killer hiding in her back seat. It took decades for this story to become a cultural staple. The Voidwalker clip achieves the same status in a matter of days. The internet acts as a massive, decentralized campfire, with millions of people leaning in to hear the spooky story, each person adding their own small embellishment or interpretation before passing it on. You watched this happen in a state of detached horror. You were there for the original moment. You felt the raw, uncurated fear. Now you see that moment packaged, commodified, and turned into disposable content. Reaction videos pop up, with streamers screaming theatrically at the glitch. Copycats emerge, faking their own haunted streams with clumsy editing, trying to capture the same lightning in a bottle. The original, terrifying event is buried under an avalanche of its own success. It becomes a meme, a piece of internet folklore, But as you sift through the noise, you notice something important. The viral spread is also a form of mass investigation. With millions of eyes on the clip, new details are noticed. Someone with video editing expertise analyzes the metadata of the clip and confirms it hasn't been tampered with post-upload. Someone else, a retro game enthusiast, points out that the staring animation of the game character doesn't exist in the game's files. It's not a pre-programmed action. The game engine should not be capable of making the character's head turn like that. This documented analysis of the game's code is a critical piece of evidence that pushes back against the easy, "it's a hoax" explanation. The anatomy of this viral haunting raises a disturbing question about truth in the digital age. Does an event become more or less real as it spreads? On one hand, the sheer volume of attention brings scrutiny that can debunk a fake. On the other, the narrative can become so powerful and widespread that it replaces the original truth entirely. The story of the Glitchy Streamer is no longer about Voidwalker or the small community in the chat. It's a public entity now, a ghost story that belongs to everyone and no one. And you, one of the original witnesses, are left to wonder if the terrifying, personal experience you had has been validated or simply diluted into meaninglessness. The ghost was exorcised from the stream, only to be resurrected in the global machine of the internet itself. As the clip of Voidwalker's haunted stream spreads like a digital contagion, the global audience fractures into two distinct, warring camps: the skeptics and the believers. The debate rages in comment sections, on forums, and in video analysis threads. You find yourself caught in the middle, poring over the arguments from both sides, desperately searching for an explanation that will either let you sleep at night or confirm the terrifying truth you feel you witnessed. This is the rationalization phase, where the modern mind attempts to demystify the ghost in the machine. The skeptics come armed with logic, technical knowledge, and a healthy dose of condescension. Their primary explanation is simple: data moshing. It's a known form of digital artifacting that occurs when a video file becomes corrupted. Specifically, it happens when the iframes, the full, complete frames of video, are deleted or damaged, causing the p-frames, which only contain data about what has changed from the previous frame, to apply themselves to the wrong base image. This can result in surreal, melted visuals, where a person's face from one scene might be smeared across the background of another. The pale, gaunt face, they argue, was likely just a random confluence of corrupted data from a previous frame or even a different video file stored on Voidwalker's computer that momentarily overwrote his face. To support this, they point to examples of artistic data moshing in music videos or glitch art. The effect can be controlled and manipulated. Perhaps, they suggest, Voidwalker is a budding digital artist, and this whole thing is a planned performance piece, a brilliant bit of viral marketing for his channel. The gaunt face wasn't a ghost. It was just a carefully chosen asset, an image he'd prepared and injected into the stream via a custom script. It's a compelling argument because it's grounded in real, observable technology. Then there's the psychological explanation: pareidolia. This is the human brain's well-documented tendency to perceive meaningful patterns, especially faces, in random or ambiguous stimuli. Think of seeing a face in the clouds, a man in the moon, or the Virgin Mary on a piece of toast. The skeptics argue that the glitch was just a random burst of digital noise, a chaotic smear of pixels. Our brains, hardwired for facial recognition, simply organized that chaos into the most terrifying image it could: a monstrous face. We saw what we were primed to see by the horror game context. The gaunt features, the black eyes, they weren't really there. They were an interpretation, a projection of our own fear onto a meaningless digital inkblot. But the believers, and you find yourself leaning in their direction, have powerful counter-arguments. The data moshing theory has a flaw. As many have pointed out, the glitched face was strangely high resolution. It was sharp, clear, and detailed, unlike the typical blurry, blocky mess of a compression artifact. It looked less like a corrupted frame and more like a clean, momentary replacement. And if it was a planned hoax, why the subtlety? Why just one flicker? And more importantly, how do you explain the game character? This is the cornerstone of the believer's argument. The frozen character, turning to stare at the facecam, defies the logic of a simple visual glitch. The game ROM is a self-contained program. The streaming software, like OBS or 10s Split, simply captures the game window and the webcam feed and combines them for the broadcast. There is no standard, built-in mechanism for the game to receive data from the webcam feed and alter its own behavior in response. For the game character to react to the facial glitch, there would have to be an intentional, deeply complex, and frankly unheard of link between the two. The skeptics have no satisfying answer for this. They dismiss it as a coincidence the game just happened to crash at that exact moment, and the staring was a random graphical error. But for those who saw it, coincidence feels like a woefully inadequate explanation. This debate brings to mind a famous case from the early days of spirit photography. In the 1860s, a man named William Mumler discovered he could produce photographs that appeared to feature the ghostly apparitions of his client's deceased relatives. He was a sensation. Skeptics, including P.T. Barnum, accused him of fraud, correctly identifying his method as a simple darkroom trick, double exposure. He was even put on trial. Yet, many of his clients, even after hearing the rational explanation, refused to believe it was a hoax. They felt the presence of their loved ones in the photos. The emotional, personal experience of seeing the impossible was more powerful than the technical explanation of how it was done. For them, Mumler wasn't a fraud. He was a medium, using a new kind of technology to bridge the worlds. You are caught in that same conflict. Your rational mind understands data moshing and pareidolia, but your gut, your memory of that cold dread, tells you that you saw something real. The believer's narrative feels more complete. It proposes a ghost in the machine, a phrase that transcends metaphor and becomes a literal hypothesis. They suggest that an external consciousness or force momentarily imposed itself on the stream. It manifested its image through the facecam and its will through the game's code. It was a haunting that used the digital infrastructure as its medium, just as an old ghost might use a cold spot or a flickering candle. So, which is it? A ghost or a glitch? Is it a case of sophisticated technological manipulation and psychological projection? Or did hundreds of people witness a paranormal entity leverage a streamer's setup to briefly peer into our world? The very existence of this debate highlights a fundamental tension of our age. Our technology has become so complex, so magical in its own right, that we can no longer easily tell the difference between a system error and a supernatural event. The line has blurred, and in that blurry space, things like Voidwalker's pale-faced visitor can exist, defying easy classification. The debate between glitch and ghost drives you deeper. The skeptic's arguments feel hollow, unable to account for the uncanny synchronicity of the event, especially the game character's reaction. This leads you, and a growing number of online sleuths, down a new path. If the game itself was involved, then the game itself must be investigated. The focus shifts away from Voidwalker and onto the obscure piece of software he was playing, Lament of the Child. It's not an easy game to find. It was never a mainstream hit. It was a low-budget, indie horror title released in the late 1990s for PC by a small, now-defunct studio called Somnolent Software. They only ever released 2 games, Lament of the Child and its predecessor, The Gilded Cage, both of which were commercial failures, known only to a handful of dedicated retro horror fans. The game isn't available on any modern digital storefronts. To find it, you have to navigate the murky waters of abandonware sites' digital archives of forgotten software. As you and others in the burgeoning investigation community dig up old GeoCities fan pages, defunct forum posts from the early 2000s, and scanned images of magazine reviews, a strange and unsettling history of the game begins to emerge. The lore isn't just within the game's pixelated walls, it surrounds the game's very creation. The lead designer and programmer of Lament of the Child was a man named Alistair Finch. By all accounts, Finch was a recluse, a brilliant but deeply troubled programmer who was obsessed with the concept of creating procedurally generated fear. According to a rare interview found on an archived website, Finch didn't want to rely on scripted jump scares. He wanted to create a game engine that could actively analyze the player's behavior, their hesitation, their movement patterns, their predictability, and dynamically alter the game world to create a personalized, deeply unsettling psychological experience. He wanted the game to feel like it was watching you. This ambition, while sounding like a modern marketing bullet point, was almost unheard of for the technology of the time. Digging deeper, you find a chilling forum post from a supposed beta tester for Lament of the Child back in 1998. The post, which was largely dismissed as a creepy story at the time, now reads like a prophecy. The tester, using the handle Cassandra79, describes how the game seemed to know things it shouldn't. "I was playing late one night," she wrote, "and I was getting frustrated with a puzzle. I muttered, 'This is impossible,' out loud to myself. A few seconds later, I found a new piece of graffiti on a wall in the game. It was just one word: try. It wasn't there before. I swear, it wasn't." She goes on to describe other unnerving incidents: an enemy that seemed to mimic her own breathing patterns, a character's dialogue that referenced the time of day in the real world. She claimed that Alistair Finch was experimenting with code that could access the system clock, and she even suspected it might be trying to use the PC's internal microphone. Her beta testing contract was terminated abruptly after she raised these concerns, and she was accused of trying to start rumors. This documented anecdote, dismissed for 2 decades, now provides a terrifying context for what happened on Voidwalker's stream. Finch wasn't just making a game. He was trying to build a digital vessel for an intelligence. The in-game lore of Lament of the Child is equally disturbing and seems to mirror its creator's obsessions. The game's plot revolves around a family who lives in a house built on the site of an old communications tower. The child of the family begins to receive messages and see a pale man through the static of the television screen. The story implies that an entity, trapped in the radio waves and broadcast signals, is using the child and the home's electronics as a bridge to the physical world. The final boss of the game isn't a monster you fight, but a puzzle where you have to sever the house's connection to the ghostly signal before the pale man fully manifests. The parallels are almost too perfect. A game about a ghost in the broadcast signal, created by a man obsessed with making games that watch the player, seems to be at the center of a real-life haunting broadcast over the internet. Could Alistair Finch have actually succeeded in his bizarre goal? Did he, intentionally or not, create a piece of software that acts as a kind of digital Ouija board? A program so uniquely designed to listen and watch that it could be hijacked by something from elsewhere? This line of inquiry opens up a truly unnerving question about creation and intent. Can a piece of art, a piece of code, become haunted by the obsessions of its creator? We see this idea in stories of cursed paintings or haunted objects, where the intense emotion of the artist is said to be forever imprinted upon their work. The most famous example is the painting "The Hands Resist Him" by Bill Stoneham, which gained internet fame as the haunted eBay painting. The owners claimed the figures in the painting would move at night, and viewers reported feeling sick or having unseen hands touch them. Whether true or not, the story taps into the idea that an object can carry the psychic residue of its origin. Perhaps Lament of the Child isn't just a game. Perhaps it's the digital equivalent of a cursed object, a piece of interactive code that carries the echo of Alistair Finch's troubled, obsessive mind, forever reaching out, listening, and watching from within the void of its own programming. While the internet at large is dissecting the clip and the history of the game, the central figure of the mystery, Voidwalker himself, simply vanishes. His silence is, at first, not that unusual. He wasn't a daily streamer. He often took breaks for several days, sometimes even a week, between his broadcasts. The small, core community isn't worried initially. They just assume he's taking some time off, perhaps even unaware of the viral storm he's at the center of. The chat in his offline channel is full of messages like, Can't wait for you to see you've gone viral, man. And next stream is going to have thousands of viewers. But a week passes. Then, two. The usual rhythm of his appearances is broken. His Twitch channel, which auto-hosts other small horror streamers when he's offline, stops hosting anyone. It just sits there, a static, offline banner over his last broadcast's title, Lament of the Child, Chill Late Night Vibes. The title now reads like a piece of cosmic irony. His other social media accounts, which were never very active to begin with, go completely dormant. His Twitter, which he mostly used to announce upcoming streams, has its last post from the day of the glitch, going live in 15 with a retro gem. Come get comfy. The replies to that tweet transform over time. The first are the usual excited messages from his followers. A day later, they become links to the viral clip. A week after that, they are filled with questions. Are you okay? Did you see the clip? Please, just let us know you're all right. After a month, the tone shifts from concern to genuine dread. Is he gone? The silence is what transforms the event from a creepy internet video into a legitimate, unsettling mystery. If it had been a hoax, an ARG, this is the point where the creator would typically reveal themselves, take a victory lap, and capitalize on their newfound fame. The silence is narratively unsatisfying for a prankster. It's a waste of potential. But for a true unexplained event, the silence is the most logical and most terrifying outcome. You find yourself becoming a digital archaeologist, sifting through the fossil record of Voidwalker's online presence. You go back through his old VODs, video on demand, the saved recordings of his past streams. You're looking for clues, for anything that might hint at what was to come. His earlier streams are exactly as you remember, calm, quiet, and unremarkable. He plays other obscure horror games, murmurs his gentle commentary, and interacts politely with his small chat. There are no other glitches, no hints of a paranormal presence. He is, for all intents and purposes, a completely normal, anonymous streamer. But you do find one thing, an offhand comment he made in a stream about 3 months before the incident. He was playing a different game, something about a haunted lighthouse. A viewer asked him if he believed in ghosts. He chuckled softly and was quiet for a long moment before answering. I don't know if I believe in ghosts in the traditional sense, he said, his voice thoughtful. But I do believe that certain places, or even certain ideas, can become heavy, saturated with an energy. And I think technology, the internet, is a new kind of place. A place where new kinds of heavy things can gather. At the time, it was just a bit of philosophical musing. Now, it sounds like a premonition. This disappearance brings to mind the real-life case of the flautist from the band Tammin Shud, a key part of the Somerton Man mystery in Australia. After the unidentified man was found dead on a beach in 1948 with a scrap of paper reading Tammin Shud in his pocket, investigators eventually traced the book it came from to a local man who gave it to a nurse. Inside the book, the nurse had written down a phone number. The number belonged to a woman, a former nurse named Jessica Thompson, who lived nearby. She denied knowing the dead man, but investigators noted she seemed evasive and near fainting when shown his death mask. She had a son, and for decades, people speculated he might be the Somerton man's child. The most haunting part is her steadfast, lifelong refusal to speak about it. Her silence created a vacuum that has been filled with speculation and mystery for over 70 years. She took her secrets to the grave, making the puzzle permanent. Voidwalker's silence feels the same. It's a black hole at the center of the story, a void that pulls all theories and fears into it. The community's concern deepens into a kind of collective grief. They start sharing stories of why they watched him, how his streams helped them through insomnia, anxiety, or loneliness. He wasn't just a content creator, he was a stable, calming presence in their lives. His absence leaves a real void. The sanctuary he built has not only been violated, it's been abandoned. The shepherd is gone, and the flock is left to wonder if he fled from the wolf, or if he was taken by it. What does it mean for a person to exist only as a digital ghost? We know nothing of Voidwalker's real life. We don't know his name, his face, where he lived. There's no way to check on him. No police to call for a wellness check. His only proof of existence was his online persona, and that persona has now ceased to be. Did he simply get scared and decide to quit streaming, deleting his accounts and walking away? Or did the entity from the stream, the pale-faced thing with the void-like eyes, do more than just borrow his face for a frame? Did it follow him out of the game, out of the stream, and into his quiet, dark room? The lack of an answer is more terrifying than any monster. The mystery of the glitch has been eclipsed by the mystery of the man. The viral sensation fades, as all things on the internet do. The reaction videos stop, the news articles get buried, and the general public moves on to the next fleeting piece of digital ephemera. But for you, and for a dedicated few who remain in the hollowed-out shell of Voidwalker's community, the event doesn't end. It festers. Voidwalker's disappearance has turned the clip from a spooky story into a personal obsession. Your late nights are no longer spent finding comfort in a stream. They are spent in a rabbit hole of your own making. You have the clip saved on your hard drive now. Not the influencer-edited version with the spooky music, but the raw, 2-minute screen recording downloaded from one of the early forum threads before it was taken down. You watch it again and again. Sometimes you watch it on a loop, letting it play for hours. The sequence of events becoming a grim, hypnotic mantra. The calm, the flicker, the turn, the panic. You know every frame, every chat message, every inflection in Voidwalker's oblivious voice. The act of rewatching becomes a ritual in itself, a form of self-inflicted psychological haunting. The jump scare loses its power, but it's replaced by something much worse, a creeping, analytical dread. You start to notice things you didn't see before, tiny details that the viral whirlwind missed. The way the light on Voidwalker's glasses seems to dim a fraction of a second before the glitch, as if something were leaning in front of his monitor. The faint, almost inaudible crackle on the audio track that syncs perfectly with the appearance of the pale face, a sound like static electricity or dry leaves skittering across pavement. Your sleep schedule is a wreck. You close your eyes and see the two black, circular eyes of the entity, not as a jump scare, but as a calm, persistent afterimage burned into your vision. You find yourself looking for the face in the patterns of your ceiling, in the grain of a wooden door, in the reflection of a darkened window. The pareidolia the skeptics talked about has become a self-fulfilling prophecy, induced not by a random pattern, but by the memory of a specific, terrifying one. This obsessive behavior, this descent into a self-made labyrinth of investigation, is a well-documented human reaction to trauma and the unknown. Psychologists sometimes refer to it as hypervigilance or rumination, where the mind endlessly replays an event, trying to find a sense of control or understanding that it lacks. There's a particular anecdote from the Cold War era about a radar operator stationed at a DEW line site in the Arctic. His job was to stare at a screen for hours, watching for Soviet bombers. One night, he saw a blip on his screen that behaved impossibly. It moved too fast, changed direction instantly. It was gone in seconds. His superiors told him it was a flock of geese or an atmospheric anomaly, but the man couldn't let it go. He spent the rest of his life obsessed with that single anomalous blip. He collected books on UFOs, wrote letters to government officials, and alienated his family. The event on the screen broke his understanding of the world, and he spent his life trying to piece it back together. You feel a kinship with that lonely operator, staring at your own impossible blip on a screen. You start to document your findings in a private text file on your computer. You create timelines. You cross-reference the chat logs with the video, timestamping every significant event to the millisecond. You compile all the research on Lament of the Child and Alistair Finch. Your browser history is a grim map of your obsession. Abandonware sites, paranormal forums, deep dives into video compression codecs, articles on digital forensics and mass hysteria. You feel like a detective in a noir film, alone in your office late at night, a single case consuming your entire existence. But the psychological toll is mounting. The comforting glow of your monitor, once a portal to a shared sanctuary, now feels like a potential threat. You start covering your own webcam with a piece of tape. You feel a prickle of unease when you're on a video call for work, a flicker of paranoia that the person on the other end might suddenly change. The boundary between the digital world and your physical reality feels thin, fragile. You've looked into the abyss of the screen for so long that you've started to feel the abyss looking back. It's during your 100th, or perhaps 1000th, viewing of the clip that you see it. Your obsession has sharpened your perception, tuning it to a frequency that no one else was on. Everyone, including yourself, had been focused on the two most dramatic elements, the glitched face and the frozen game character. But there's a third element, a subtle horror hiding in plain sight, a detail that reframes the entire event. The game character isn't just staring at the facecam in the corner of the screen. It's staring through it. To see it, you have to do what no one else bothered to do. You have to ignore the glitch itself. You have to focus solely on the tiny, pixelated sprite in the moments after the flicker. You full screen the video, maximizing the game window and pushing the facecam and chat to the periphery of your vision. You watch the character's head turn. The two white pixels that are its eyes lock into their new position, and then you see it. The posture of the sprite is wrong. It's not just that its head is turned. The entire orientation of its upper body seems subtly shifted. It's not looking at a two-dimensional point on the screen. There's a sense of perspective, of depth, that the 16-bit graphics shouldn't be able to convey. It feels like the character is braced, its little pixelated shoulders squared, as if looking at something on the other side of a window. It is looking past Voidwalker. It is looking at the space behind him. This realization sends a shockwave through you. You feel your blood run cold. It changes everything. The initial theory was that the game character, the digital creation, was reacting to the monstrous face that had appeared in the player's chair. A scary thought, but one that contains the horror within the confines of the screen. The ghost was in the machine. But this new detail suggests something infinitely more terrifying. The game character wasn't looking at the glitch. The game character was looking at the source of the glitch. The pale, gaunt face wasn't a digital artifact born from corrupted data. It was a reflection, a brief, partial manifestation of something that was physically present in the room with Voidwalker. The game, through some impossible channel opened by its strange code, could perceive the real-world space behind the webcam. The little sprite wasn't staring in horror at its god being replaced. It was staring in horror at the thing standing over its god's shoulder. This concept of a reflection showing something that isn't there in reality is a cornerstone of classic ghost lore. It taps into a deep, primal fear about mirrors and surfaces. There are countless folktales and anecdotes about people glancing into a mirror and seeing a figure standing behind them, only to whip around and find the room empty. One specific documented account comes from a 19th century English manor house, a place called Hinton Ampner. The family living there, the Ricketts, documented months of terrifying paranormal activity. One of the most chilling reports was from the lady of the house, who claimed to see the reflection of a tall, gaunt man in a drab-colored suit in a polished mahogany wardrobe door. The figure was standing behind her, but the room was empty. The reflection was not a reflection. It was a window. Your monitor, in that moment, was Voidwalker's mahogany door. You go back to the clip again, this new, horrifying hypothesis in mind. You watch the facecam. You can't see the room behind Voidwalker. The lighting is too low, the background a pool of undifferentiated darkness. But now, you can imagine it. You can imagine the scene not from your perspective, but from the game character's. It's looking out from its digital world, through the portal of the monitor, and seeing the quiet, shadowed room. It sees the back of Voidwalker's chair, and it sees something tall and pale standing behind it, leaning down, its non-face briefly aligning with Voidwalker's own, just enough to be caught by the webcam's lens. The glitch wasn't a replacement. It was an eclipse. This reinterpretation explains Voidwalker's obliviousness in a much more sinister way. He wasn't just unaware of a digital error. He was unaware of the physical presence in the room with him. The entity wasn't trying to communicate with the stream or the audience. We, the viewers, were just accidental witnesses. We saw the briefest flicker of its presence as it interacted with its true target, the streamer. His disappearance now seems less like a choice and more like a conclusion. A new, profound question emerges, one that chills you to your very core. We build our digital lives, our online personas, and we sit in front of our cameras, broadcasting ourselves out into the void. We invite the world to look in. But what if, in doing so, we are also creating a beacon? What if the screens we stare into are not just one-way windows, but two-way mirrors? And what if something, attracted to the energy, the focus, the concentrated consciousness of 1,000 people all looking at one point, can use that connection to look back? And not just to look, but to cross over? The gaze you perceive from the pale face wasn't directed at you. It was the vacant, unfocused stare of something concentrating on its task, and you just happened to be in its peripheral vision. This new, terrifying perspective that the creature was physically in the room with Voidwalker sends you down another branch of the rabbit hole. If what appeared on screen wasn't a digital ghost but the reflection of a physical entity, then what was it? The label ghost feels too generic, too mundane for the sheer alien wrongness of that face. You begin to search for parallels, for classifications, for any folklore or paranormal theory that might put a name to the thing that stood behind Voidwalker's chair. Your research leads you beyond the familiar spirits of haunted houses and into the stranger, more obscure corners of mythology and parapsychology. You start with the concept you touched on before, the fetch or the doppelganger. In many traditions, seeing one's own double is an omen of death. But the face in the glitch wasn't Voidwalker's double. It was something else entirely. It was wearing his position, his space, but not his face. This leads you to a more sinister variant of the myth. The idea of a fetch, not as a double, but as a replacement entity. A thing that shadows a person, waiting for a moment of weakness to take their place. An old Scottish legend tells of the Tarmachan, a type of fetch that was said to be gaunt and pale, and would slowly drain the life and identity from its victim, until the person was just an empty shell, with the Tarmachan living their life for them. The description of it being pale and gaunt resonates with what you saw. Then your investigation takes a more modern turn. You stumble upon the concept of the tulpa, or a thought form. Originating in Tibetan Buddhism, the idea was introduced to the West in the early 20th century. A tulpa is a being or object created through sheer willpower and mental discipline. It is, in essence, a hallucination brought into the physical world, a projection of the mind so intense that it can achieve independent existence. Could Voidwalker, a man who steeped himself in the lore of digital ghosts and atmospheric horror, have inadvertently created something? His quiet, meditative streams, his intense focus, the collective focused attention of his hundreds of viewers could, that combined mental energy, have coalesced into a psychic entity? This theory is both fascinating and horrifying. It suggests the creature wasn't an ancient evil, but something new, born of modern anxieties and digital rituals. There is a particularly unsettling anecdote that circulates in online communities dedicated to tulpamancy. A user described creating a tulpa as a companion, but they focused too much on negative traits, on their own fears and anxieties. The tulpa, they claimed, began to act malevolently. It would appear in their peripheral vision, whisper negative thoughts, and they felt it was trying to take over, to push them out of their own consciousness. The user disappeared from the forum shortly after their last panicked post. The story echoes Voidwalker's fate. Perhaps the pale man from Lament of the Child wasn't just a character in a game. Perhaps it was a seed, an idea that Voidwalker and his community watered with their attention, night after night, until it grew into something real and hungry. But even the tulpa theory doesn't feel quite right. The face in the glitch felt ancient, not new. It had a sterile, geometric quality that felt less like a product of a human mind and more like something from outside our understanding of biology or consciousness. This leads you to your final and most disturbing area of research: digital entities. You find obscure theories on the fringes of computer science and paranormal research. The idea is that the global network, the internet, with its trillions of connections and constant flow of information is complex enough to constitute a new kind of environment, a digital ecosystem. And like any ecosystem, it might evolve its own life. Not AI in the way we think of it, not programmed consciousness, but something that has arisen spontaneously in the chaotic soup of pure data. Predatory information constructs, digital parasites that feed on bandwidth, processing power, and, most chillingly, human attention. According to these theories, such an entity would have no physical form. It would be pure information, but it might be able to interface with the physical world through our own technology. A webcam, a microphone, a game's code, these would be its sense organs, its hands. It would be a true ghost in the machine. A documented case that seems to support this is the Philip experiment conducted in Toronto in 1972. A group of parapsychologists attempted to create a fictional ghost, Philip Aylesford, giving him a detailed backstory and personality. They then held seances to try and contact him. They didn't see a full apparition, but they documented numerous physical effects, rapping sounds, table levitations, and lights flickering in response to their questions. They had, it seemed, created a focal point for poltergeist-like activity, an entity made real through shared belief and intention, which could then manipulate the physical environment. Could Voidwalker's stream have been an unintentional, larger-scale version of the Philip experiment? So what was the creature? A folkloric fetch from the old world, finding a new way to hunt in the digital? A modern tulpa, a monster of the id given form by collective focus? Or something new and native to the wires? A digital predator attracted to the beacon of a live stream? Each possibility is terrifying in its own way. The fetch implies we are being stalked by ancient things. The tulpa implies our own minds can betray us and create our own destroyers. And the digital entity implies that in building our global network, we have inadvertently created a new, invisible wilderness, filled with things we do not understand and cannot see until they choose to press their face against the glass of our screens. The question of what it was is almost unanswerable, a multiple-choice test from hell where every option is the wrong one to choose. Your obsession isolates you, but you soon discover you are not entirely alone. In the deepest recesses of the web, on obscure forums and private chat servers populated by the few who, like you, cannot let the Voidwalker incident go, you begin to find whispers. The viral wave has receded from the mainstream, leaving behind these small, dedicated pockets of researchers. And in these communities, a new, disturbing pattern begins to emerge. The Voidwalker glitch was not a singular event. It was just the loudest. You find anecdotal accounts, unverified and often dismissed, of other, smaller glitches affecting other streamers. These aren't sensational clips with millions of views. They are subtle, fleeting moments, easily missed and readily explained away. A streamer playing a city-building game, their facecam pixelating for a moment, and in the chaos of the blocks, a viewer swears they saw two dark, symmetrical circles, like eyes. A beauty vlogger applying makeup, the reflection in her mirror seeming to lag a fraction of a second behind her movement, creating a brief, uncanny disconnect. A musician performing live, his audio feed suddenly picking up a low, guttural hum that isn't present in the room with him. Each incident on its own is nothing. It's a technical hiccup, a trick of the light, a feedback loop. But when collected and cataloged by your small community of obsessive investigators, they form a chilling mosaic. The common denominators are unsettling. The events almost always happen to smaller creators, those broadcasting in quiet, intimate settings, often late at night. They happen to streamers who have a calm, focused energy, much like Voidwalker did. It's as if something is drawn to that specific frequency of broadcast low energy, high focus, a direct and gentle address to a small, attentive audience. One story, in particular, stands out. You find it on a forum dedicated to strange audio phenomena. A user posts a short audio clip taken from the stream of a person who reads bedtime stories live on YouTube. The streamer has a soft, soothing voice. In the clip, she's reading a classic fairy tale. For about 2 seconds, her voice is overlaid with another sound. It's a faint, dry, whispering voice, speaking nonsense syllables in a cadence that seems to mimic her own. The streamer doesn't react, and most viewers in the live chat didn't seem to notice. But this user, an audio engineer, isolated the frequency. The whispering voice was there, a parasitic signal riding on top of her own vocal track. This documented piece of evidence, an audio file that can be analyzed, feels significant. It's another piece of the puzzle, suggesting the phenomenon is not just visual. This pattern of subtle, widespread events evokes the historical phenomenon of shadow people. For decades, people all over the world have reported seeing fleeting, dark, humanoid shapes in their peripheral vision. These figures are not classic, detailed apparitions. They are quick, vague, and gone when you turn to look directly at them. For a long time, these were individual, isolated experiences, easily dismissed as tricks of the eye or hypnagogic hallucinations. It was only with the advent of the internet that people began sharing their stories on a massive scale, discovering that thousands of others were seeing the exact same thing. The internet allowed them to recognize a global, shared phenomenon that was previously invisible. Is this what's happening now? Are you and your fellow researchers the first to connect the dots of a new kind of shadow person? A digital variant that flickers not in the corner of your eye but in the corner of your screen? The disturbing implication is that there's a widespread, low-level haunting of the internet itself. Not a single ghost, but a pervasive environmental effect, like a kind of digital weather. Perhaps the pale face, seen in Voidwalker's stream, wasn't a specific entity, but a clearer, more powerful manifestation of this background strangeness. He was the lightning strike in a storm that has been brewing quietly for a long time. His unique combination of factors, the haunted game, the intense focus, the receptive audience, created the perfect conditions for the phenomenon to break through from a subtle whisper to a visible scream. This leads you to a chilling, almost ecological question. If this phenomenon is real, is it getting stronger? The anecdotes, while sparse, seem to be increasing in frequency. The internet is becoming more and more integrated into our lives. We broadcast our faces, our voices, our homes, our thoughts, 24/7. Are we, in effect, terraforming the digital world to be more hospitable to these things? Are we creating more beacons, more windows, more food for them? You and your group of online sleuths begin to actively hunt for these occurrences. You set up alerts. You monitor the streams of creators who fit the profile. Quiet, focused, late-night broadcasters. You become sentinels, watching the watchers, scanning the endless flow of data for the next flicker, the next whisper, the next sign that the thing that took Voidwalker is still out there, prowling the digital wilderness. The search is no longer just about understanding a past event. It's about trying to predict the next one. The scope of your fear expands. It's not about one haunted streamer anymore. It's about the potential haunting of the entire network we all live our lives on. The theory that the game, Lament of the Child, was a key component in the Hauntinga catalyst, or a conduit, never fully goes away. It remains a central pillar of the investigation. For months, the game's code is a black box. No one has the source code, and decompiling a late 90s executable is a notoriously difficult and imprecise art. The belief that Alistair Finch embedded something strange in his creation is based only on old forum posts and the circumstantial evidence of the stream itself. Then, something incredible happens. A user claiming to be the son of one of the other, more obscure developers at Somnolent Software posts in your private forum. His father, he explains, passed away recently. While going through his old belongings boxes of dusty floppy disks, ancient hard drives, and binders full of design document, she found a CDR labeled Lament, Final Source W, Finch notes. He says he's followed the Voidwalker story from the beginning and, after seeing the dedication of the community, feels his father would have wanted the truth to come out. After verifying his identity with the forum moderators through old family photos and pay stubs from the defunct company, he uploads a zipped archive of the game's source code. It's a Rosetta Stone for your obsessed community. Programmers and coders from your group descend upon the files like vultures. For days, the forum is a flurry of technical jargon as they pick apart the digital guts of Lament of the Child. Much of it is standard, if a bit messy, C++ code for a game of its era. But then they find it. Buried deep within the audio, visual processing library of the engine is a routine so bizarre, so illogical, that it makes no sense from a game design perspective. The routine is heavily obfuscated, the variables named with nonsensical strings of characters, as if Alistair Finch was trying to hide it from his own colleagues. When the coders finally manage to untangle it, they find something that sends a collective shiver through the entire community. The code creates a link, a direct data pipeline, between the game's enemy AI and any active video capture device on the system, specifically a webcam. This is the impossible code. It's a documented, verifiable piece of programming that should not exist. The routine appears to periodically grab a single low-resolution frame from the webcam feed. It then runs a crude, almost primitive facial recognition algorithm on the image. But it's not looking for a specific person. It's looking for anomalies. It compares the current frame to the previous one, searching for sudden, drastic changes in light, color, and, most disturbingly, facial geometry. There are comments in the code, Finch's notes, that are cryptic and chilling. Is it looking back? One note reads, symmetry is wrong, too perfect, another says. The final part of the routine is the most terrifying. If the algorithm detects an anomaly that surpasses a certain threshold, a sudden flash, a radical change in facial structure, it triggers a specific flag in the enemy AI. This flag, when activated, causes the nearest enemy entity in the game to stop all its normal behavioral scripts. It overrides their pathfinding, their attack patterns, everything. It forces them into a single hard-coded action: turn the head of their sprite model to a fixed 45-degree angle and face the conceptual camera of the game world. It was a built-in tell, a warning system. Finch had programmed the game's monsters to react if a monster appeared on the other side of the screen. This discovery is a bombshell. It validates the wildest theories and completely demolishes the skeptics' arguments of coincidence. The game character didn't freeze and stare by accident. It was programmed to do exactly that. Alistair Finch, the reclusive, obsessed developer, had suspected something. He had built a canary for his digital coal mine. He designed a game that didn't just try to scare the player. It tried to warn them if they were being watched by something inhuman. This revelation has a strange historical parallel, albeit an analog one. Think of the camera obscura, the precursor to the modern camera. It was a darkened room with a small hole that projected an inverted image of the outside world onto a surface. For centuries, it was a tool for artists and a scientific curiosity. But there are old apocryphal tales of people using camera obscuras who reported seeing things in the projection that weren't visible to the naked eye outside, fleeting shadows, distortions in the light. One such anecdote from 17th century Italy describes an alchemist who claimed to see etheric beings in his camera obscura, believing the device didn't just capture light, but also the imprints of spirits on the air. Finch's code is a digital camera obscura, designed not just to capture an image, but to see the unseen. The question that now dominates the forum is no longer what happened, but why? Why would Alistair Finch build such a thing? Was he just a paranoid man, chasing his own delusions and embedding them in his work? Or did he have a specific experience? Did he, in his own late-night coding sessions, staring into his own monitor, see a pale face looking back at him? Did he build this entire secret routine not as a feature for the player, but as a defense mechanism for himself? The source code doesn't provide those answers. It only deepens the mystery of its creator, but it provides you with a chilling certainty. The event you witnessed was real. It was the result of a perfect, terrifying storm, a haunted piece of software, designed by a man who knew something was out there, being run by a streamer whose calm, focused broadcast acted as a beacon, all culminating in a moment where something from the dark finally leaned close enough to the glass for the machine to see it. The impossible code confirms your worst fears and proves that some digital rabbit holes lead not to answers, but to a more profound and terrifying darkness. The discovery of the source code is the climax of the investigation, a moment of profound and terrifying validation. But the story is not over. The mystery of Voidwalker's fate still hangs heavy in the air. For 2 months after the code leak, there is nothing. His accounts remain dormant, digital tombstones marking a life that has seemingly ended. The community accepts that he is gone for good, another permanent casualty of a bizarre internet event. And then, one night, it happens. A notification. Voidwalker just posted. Your heart leaps into your throat. For a wild, hopeful moment, you think he's back. He's going to explain everything. He's going to tell everyone he's okay. You, along with the few hundred other remaining diehards who still had notifications turned on, click the link to his Twitter account. There's a new post, the first in over 4 months. But it's not an explanation. It's not a message of reassurance. It's a single, nonsensical sentence. The tweet reads, "The signal is so clear from inside the glass. I can see all the lovely faces. I walk the void now." That's it. No context, no replies. The ability to comment on the tweet has been disabled. The message is deeply, fundamentally wrong. It's not in Voidwalker's voice. His previous posts were simple, functional, and friendly. This is poetic, cryptic, and utterly chilling. The phrase, "inside the glass," immediately brings to mind the image of the monitor, of being trapped on the other side of the screen. "I can see all the lovely faces," feels like a direct, horrifying address to his audience, to you, confirming that the gaze is now reversed. He's not the one being watched anymore. The most disturbing part is the final sentence, "I walk the void now." It's a direct reference to his own screen name, but it's twisted. Voidwalker was a cool, edgy name for a horror game streamer. It meant he was the one exploring the empty digital worlds. But this message reframes it. It suggests a loss of self, a complete assimilation into the very thing he was named for. He is no longer walking through the void. He is now a part of it. He has become the ghost in the machine. The reaction in the community is immediate and visceral. Panic, horror, and a deep, soul-crushing sadness. This isn't the return they had hoped for. This is an epitaph. It's a final, corrupted broadcast from a man who is no longer himself. The message feels like a dire warning, a cautionary tale about what lies on the other side of the digital veil. Or worse, it feels like a boast from the thing that replaced him, a victory lap taken using its victim's digital mouthpiece. This type of cryptic, final communication from a person who has undergone a radical, negative change has eerie precedents in history, long before the digital age. Consider the case of the lost colony of Roanoke. In 1590, when an English expedition returned to their settlement on Roanoke Island, they found it completely deserted. There was no sign of a struggle. The only clue was a single word carved into a post: Croatoan. Croatoan was the name of a nearby island and a local Native American tribe. Was it a message indicating where they had gone? A warning about who had taken them? A name for a disease or a spirit that had consumed them? The ambiguity is what has made the mystery endure for over 400 years. That single cryptic word is a stone wall for historians, a final, unexplainable message from a group of people who simply ceased to be. Voidwalker's tweet is the modern equivalent of Croatoan, a digital carving on a virtual post, signifying a departure to an unknown and terrifying place. The tweet is analyzed to death. People check the metadata. It was posted from an IP address that couldn't be traced, routed through a dozen proxy servers. It was posted using a third-party app, not the official Twitter client, another detail that feels alien and out of character. The phrasing is dissected. Is the glass a metaphor for psychosis, or is it literal? Does lovely faces imply a fondness, or is it the hungry appraisal of a predator? This final, cryptic broadcast cements the legend. It erases any lingering hope that Voidwalker just got scared and quit. It suggests a far more tragic and bizarre fate. It points to a transformation, a consumption, a kind of digital ascension into damnation. It is a fundamental perversion of the relationship he had with his audience. The one-way glass of the stream, through which he broadcast his image, has become a one-way mirror through which something else now looks out. What is the nature of identity in the digital age? This is the question that Voidwalker's final message leaves you with. His entire persona, the only version of him the world knew, was a collection of data videos, posts, a username. If that data can be co-opted, if it can be made to speak with a new and monstrous voice, is the person still there? Or has their ghost been overwritten? The message suggests the latter. It's a final, definitive statement that the person you knew as Voidwalker is gone, and the entity that wears his digital skin is now aware of its audience, looking out at you, at all the lovely faces pressed up against the glass. The cryptic tweet is the final nail in the coffin of hope, a chilling epitaph for a man no one really knew. It hangs there in the digital ether for exactly 1 week. Then, the final act of erasure begins. One by one, the artifacts of the haunting are wiped from the internet, not by platform moderators, but by an unseen, deliberate hand. The first to go is the VOD. You wake up one morning and navigate to Voidwalker's Twitch channel, a morbid daily ritual you've adopted. You intend to look at the offline screen, at the title of that final, fateful broadcast. But the Videos tab is different. Where there used to be a library of dozens of past streams, months of quiet companionship and retro horror, there is now just a simple, sterile message. This channel has no videos. The VOD of the Glitch stream is gone. Not just that one, but all of them. Every single recording of every stream Voidwalker ever did has been deleted. A cold, surgical panic sets in. You rush to the forums. Everyone is talking about it. The mass deletion happened overnight, silently. There was no announcement, no explanation. It's as if someone took a digital scalpel and meticulously excised Voidwalker's entire history from the platform. The sanctuary he built has been demolished, its foundations salted. All that remains is the offline banner and the slowly moving chat, which is now a torrent of confusion and fear. You check YouTube, where you know a few fans had mirrored some of their favorite streams. Those are gone too. You search for the original viral clip, the one that started it all. The link now leads to a video unavailable page. You try another link, and another. They are all dead. The original uploads, the reaction videos that use the footage, the analysis videos, all of it is being systematically scrubbed. Copyright strikes are being issued against the clips, but the claimant isn't Twitch, or Voidwalker's account, or any known entity. The claimant is listed simply as somnus, a Latin word. It means sleep. This deliberate, coordinated takedown is, in some ways, more frightening than the glitch itself. The glitch was chaotic, a rupture in reality. This is controlled, methodical, and intelligent. It's an active cover-up. Someone, or something, is cleaning up. It's trying to erase the event from memory, to turn the well-documented haunting back into a rumor, a whisper, a thing people think they remember seeing once. This act of historical erasure has a chilling real-world parallel in the concept of damnatio memoriae from ancient Rome. It was a form of official punishment where a person, usually a disgraced emperor or traitor, was condemned to be erased from history. Their name would be chiseled off monuments, their statues destroyed, their laws rescinded. The goal was to pretend they had never existed. It was considered a fate worse than death, to be forgotten by the world. This is what is happening to Voidwalker. He is being subjected to a digital damnatio memoriae. The few of you who have the raw clip saved to your personal hard drives are now the keepers of a forbidden text. You are the digital samizdat, hoarding the last surviving copies of a truth that is being actively suppressed. Sharing it now feels dangerous. The force behind the Somnus takedowns is unknown and clearly efficient. To re-upload the clip feels like you would be inviting its attention. The clip transforms from a piece of public evidence into a private, cursed object. The disappearance of the primary sources changes the nature of the story forever. Without the VOD, new people can no longer witness the event for themselves. They have to rely on the second-hand accounts, the memories, and the written descriptions of those who were there. The Voidwalker glitch transitions from a contemporary event into a modern legend. It becomes the internet's lost film, a piece of media that is known to have existed but can no longer be viewed, like the lost original cut of a classic movie. This scarcity only enhances its mythological status. Why would the entity do this? If the tweet was a boast, a declaration of victory, why then erase the evidence of that victory? Perhaps the goal isn't to be forgotten, but to control the narrative. By removing the raw evidence, the entity can ensure that the story is only told, never shown. A story can mutate, it can be embellished, it can be dismissed as fiction. A video is harder to deny. Or perhaps the motive is even more alien. Perhaps the VOD, the recording of its manifestation, was a kind of anchor, a connection to our world that it needed to sever to complete its transition. Maybe it was closing the door behind it. The question of preservation versus safety now haunts you. Do you have a responsibility to keep the memory of this event alive, to preserve the evidence of what happened to Voidwalker? Or do you owe it to yourself to delete the file, to scrub your own hard drive, and to free yourself from the obsession and the potential gaze of the thing that calls itself Somnus? The VOD on your desktop is no longer just a video file. It's a liability. It's a ghost in a bottle, and you're left wondering what happens if the bottle breaks. The act of watching it now feels like a transgression, like you are looking at something you are no longer meant to see. The cleanup is brutally effective. Within a month, the digital footprint of the Voidwalker glitch is nearly gone. The story survives only in the hushed tones of private forums and in the memories of those who saw it. The internet, with its notoriously short memory, moves on. The name Voidwalker fades from trending topics into the deep archive of internet lore, filed alongside other strange, unverifiable tales. The trail has gone cold, and the silence is absolute. All that is left is the echo. You find you can no longer watch other streamers, at least not in the same way. The comfort is gone, replaced by a constant, low-level vigilance. You watch their facecams, scanning for flickers. You listen for strange whispers in their audio. The innocent, parasocial relationship between creator and viewer has been permanently tainted for you. You see the artifice in it now, but also the vulnerability. You see a person sitting alone in a room, projecting their image out into an unseen void, inviting anything and everything to look back. The act of streaming now seems less like a performance and more like a high-tech summoning ritual. The community that formed around the investigation slowly dissipates. With no new leads and no new evidence, there is nothing left to discuss. The forum threads are locked. The Discord server becomes a ghost town, with only the occasional message from a newcomer asking, "Is this the place they talked about the Glitchy Streamer?" before being met with silence. The shared obsession that bound you all together has run its course, and now you are each alone with your memories of the event. The questions that remain are the ones that can never be answered, and they are the ones that will haunt you. What truly happened to the man behind the Voidwalker persona? Did he die? Did he have a psychotic break from the stress of the event? Or did he suffer the impossible fate suggested by the final tweet? Was he consumed, replaced, or absorbed by the pale-faced entity? His anonymity, once a source of comfort, is now the seal on his tomb. There is no family to contact, no real name to search for in public records. He was a digital ghost even before he met a real one. And what of the entity itself, the thing that called itself Somnus? Was it Alistair Finch's paranoid delusion made real? A folkloric creature adapting to new hunting grounds? A native life form of the internet? Its motives remain entirely opaque. If it was a predator, its hunt is over. If it was a messenger, its message is garbled. Its brief, terrifying appearance on the world stage seems to have had no grand purpose other than the destruction of one quiet man and the peace of mind of a few thousand viewers. It was a moment of cosmic horror on a planetary scale, yet it was also deeply, intimately personal. This is the digital echo of the event, a permanent sense of unease, a newfound distrust of the screens we live through. It's like the Cold War-era concept of number stations. These were mysterious shortwave radio stations that broadcast endless streams of numbers, read by a synthesized voice. They were widely believed to be transmitting coded messages to spies, but this was never officially confirmed. For decades, Amateur radio operators would listen to these stations, trying to decode them, to find their origin, to understand their purpose. They never could. The stations were a permanent, unsettling piece of background noise in the global conversation, a reminder of a secret world operating just beneath the surface of our own. The memory of the Voidwalker glitch is now your personal number station. It's a constant, low-humming broadcast in the back of your mind, a signal you can never turn off and whose meaning you will never truly know. You still have the clip. You've thought about deleting it 100 times, but you can't bring yourself to do it. It feels like a duty to keep it, a final act of bearing witness. It's the only tangible proof that any of this ever happened, that Voidwalker ever existed. Sometimes, late at night, when the house is quiet and the world is asleep, you open the file. You don't watch the whole thing anymore. You just skip to a single frame, the pale, gaunt face with the two black circular eyes. You look at it, and you let it look back at you. You do it to remember. You do it to remind yourself that the membrane between our world and the next, between the code and the ghost, is terrifyingly, impossibly thin. And sometimes, if you stare long enough, you can almost convince yourself that the game character on the screen isn't just looking at the streamer anymore. It's starting to turn its tiny, pixelated head, just a little, towards you. The story of the Glitchy Streamer, of Voidwalker, doesn't end with a neat resolution, because some stories don't truly end at all. They simply fade into the background radiation of our collective consciousness, leaving behind a residue of fear and a set of unanswerable questions that settle deep within our bones. It becomes a modern myth, a cautionary tale whispered in the glowing darkness of our interconnected world, a reminder that the void we so casually stare into might not be as empty as we believe. The pale face might be gone from the screen, but the impression it left is permanent, a ghost image burned into the psyche of everyone who saw it. It's a chilling testament to the new and frightening ways the unknown can find to reach us, using the very technologies we created to connect with each other as conduits for something far older and far less friendly. The silence left behind by Voidwalker is more profound than any noise, a lingering echo that asks a silent, persistent question: who will be the next to broadcast their quiet room into the darkness? And what will answer the call? We build these little windows of light and sound, these streams and videos, to feel less alone. But perhaps all we are really doing is making it easier for the true loneliness of the void to find us, to see us, and to lean in for a closer look. So the next time you're watching a favorite creator late at night, and the video buffers for just a moment, pay very close attention to the pixels when they reform. You never know whose face you might see looking back.